When we do talk about masculinity, we're often talking about it in negative terms. Phrases like men are trash or men are garbage have become, I think the word that people most associate with masculinity right now is the word toxic. Three key areas where we can clearly see that men are struggling, perhaps even, yes, in crisis, where things like brute strength aren't as valued as they used to be. We're seeing a drop in employment in men, especially young men, stagnating wages, labor market participation, and falling educational rates. A feeling that the world isn't exactly as it used to be, and men are struggling to find what their place is in the new arrangement.
As a young man, life seems to be full of promise. And while there is no way of knowing how the story of your life will play out, there are some key things you can do to increase your chances of living out a great story, instead of one full of fear, uncertainty, insecurity, and loathing. As a former young man, I feel like I can offer some words of wisdom to younger men. It is my hope to make people understand why they feel what they feel, and put a name to the various forces that push men to make terrible decisions that have lifelong consequences. Number 1, day trading and speculating on volatile stocks. It is a fact that, broadly speaking, men are willing to take more risks than women. And while this means that we see more men being wildly successful on one end of the spectrum, what doesn't get much airtime in the media are the many men who fail spectacularly on the other end of the spectrum. Now, one of the ways this plays out in the real world is seeing many young men day trading or buying speculative stocks. And I've done this too, and it seems like making the mistake of thinking that you can outsmart the market is almost like a rite of passage in the investing career of any young male. The crypto world in particular seems to be male dominated, likely for the very same reason. 90% of day traders are men, and 97% of day traders lose money in any single year. Just let that sink in for a sec. The odds of success in day trading are heavily stacked against you. And if you think you're special, you have just made the very mistake that I'm talking about here and taken the first step to dismal returns that you will look back on and lament one day. The solution? Patience is key. Investing, as they say, is simple but not easy. It doesn't take much work to simply invest in diversified ETFs and buy shares of a diversified ETF periodically. But it does take considerable discipline to not look at your balance every day. Take the long-term view. Do not get caught up in the noise of the small pullbacks and all the news. Do not look at events through a small window. After all, the world is only as wide as the window through which you look out at it. Number 2, worshipping false idols. Ever since the dawn of time, man has worshipped what he did not understand. And this atavistic and innate impulse lives on inside us, even today. With all the scientific information and knowledge available, we still cannot escape uncertainty. And nowhere is uncertainty more pronounced than in the life of a young man. What job should I do? How should I behave? Do I have the right friends? Will I ever be in a fulfilling relationship? And with the lack of real male mentors these days, young men gravitate towards pseudo-father figures. And that's not really a problem until they start looking to these individuals for answers to every question about every sphere of life. They expect them to advise them on optimal morning routines and diets and relationships and finance, even when some of these topics may be outside the locus of competence of these people.
An integral part of China that is arbitrarily not part of China.
It's similar to the halo effect, where a person's excellence in one area makes other people believe that they have their act together in all other areas of their life. Jordan Peterson may be an accomplished psychologist, but perhaps his views on climate change should be viewed with some skepticism. Andrew Huberman might be a neuroscientist, but maybe don't look to him as a paragon of morality. Elon Musk may have built massive companies, but he isn't someone you'd listen to for advice on geopolitics or optimal diets or dance moves or naming your kid, for example. The solution? It is not easy to separate the substance from the froth, and it is tempting to buy into a person's belief system wholesale. So the key is to understand why you feel drawn to certain people. Perhaps you're insecure and you're drawn to strong people. If you are poor, you might be drawn to wealthy people.
You show me a pay stub for $72,000 on it, I quit my job right now and I work for you.
But it is important to know the limits of their knowledge. Power loves a vacuum, but the vacuous also love power. Take their good and practical and credible information, but be critical anytime they venture outside their locus of competence. Now, I don't want to suggest that no one should ever venture outside their area of expertise, but understand that it is a learning process for the other individuals as well, and given the media spotlight on these individuals, they are oftentimes forced to come up with statements on subjects that they have little to no idea about. Number 3, and this is going to be a weird one, working out too much. Now, I'm a huge advocate of getting fit. Building a functional and aesthetic body pays massive dividends over time, but is also much easier to do when you are young. Your muscle building potential is much higher as a young man, given the potential for noob gains and a more optimal hormonal profile. Despite its advantages, it is easy to see a lot of young men becoming obsessed with this otherwise great habit. They are inundated with images of muscle-bound men, many of whom have had chemical assistance. A lot of young men who are not able to achieve the physiques of their favorite influencers resort to using PEDs, oftentimes at a very young age. Body dysmorphia may also set in. Even for the natural fitness influencers, you must realize that this is their job. Working out and eating well is their job. That is how they make money. Unless you want to be a fitness influencer, you need to impose judicious controls on working out and keep working out in perspective. Understand that working out and having a strong body is just something you are doing on the side for health benefits, and that you need to focus on what really matters: your calling, your career, and your relationships. Furthermore, working out has diminishing returns over time, and this is a good thing. You can take advantage of this. For example, you can reach 60 to 80% of your maximum muscle building potential with only about 3 to 4 years of diligently working out. It means you can work out hard for a few years, build a great foundation and great habits, and just work out to maintain it. Also realize that as young men, most of our value is inherited. Most of what we are and what we are worth comes from initial endowments. Maybe you have rich parents, maybe you have good genes and are good looking, etc. These sources of value are not things you have worked for. Those who have neither the genes nor the means may find the world egregiously unfair. Understand that young men start their lives at their lowest social value, generally speaking, but also with the highest potential. You have the potential to build your wealth, career, business, sense of humor, and develop kindness, wisdom, intellect, charm, and the other things you can be proud of.
Since when do you speak Italian?
Oh, self-improvement month.
You will notice the shift in this balance over time. You will achieve things and find it more rewarding than the value that comes from initial endowments. By your 30s, you'll stop worrying about how you're not tall enough or how your arms aren't big enough. You will take pride in what you have built with hard work and not what you have been given for free. The solution? Develop along many axes. Build things, whether it's knowledge, skills, a career, relationships, a business, along with a healthy body. Recognize that it's not uncommon to start from a place of very low social value and dating market value for men, and that if you keep developing, your value will only increase over time. Number 4, expensive cars. Now I say expensive cars, but feel free to insert any high-priced luxury item in its place. Now, following from the last point, speaking of men having very low social value and dating market value when young, cars. Cars are a weakness for many young men, and why wouldn't it be? We are socially conditioned to believe that men who own expensive luxury cars are valued more by women. Movies aimed at young men and kids hammer home this point. Even cars that may not be luxury cars but are finely tuned performance vehicles which cost a pretty penny are common in movies, and almost always driven by men. And it is a bewitching image, I must agree, and this marketing trick makes so many young men finance cars far outside their reach. Cars and luxury items are seen as shortcuts to status. Building a career, becoming an expert in a field, mastering a skill, these all take years. Buying luxury items take minutes and might not even cost you a thing if you finance or buy on credit. The solution? Get a practical, lightly used car based on potential usage. Your future self will thank you. Projecting status that you do not have won't get you far. A fancy car driven by a man of little substance is just a facade. It's window dressing, lipstick on a pig, as they say. Number 5, choosing a high status career even if it's not a right fit. Now this is a weird one, and I'll admit that this is probably the least egregious error out of all the ones that I'm going to talk about today. But this is something that still leads to a lot of disappointment and resentment down the road for many. As young men, we take our cues about what is good and what is valued through the media. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a ridiculously jacked special forces agent who hunted invisible extraterrestrials in a South American jungle with my equally jacked friends. And that aspirational element does not change as we grow older. What does change are the types of careers we aspire to. Schools do a piss poor job of telling us what actual jobs are like. The things we learn at school seem so abstracted and disconnected from the realities of everyday work and life. The media tells us that men in suits talking fast about money in the financial district are valued, so that is a good career choice. They get the women, they live the high life, they work on multi-million-dollar deals and drive expensive cars. Not dissimilar from how corporate high-powered lawyers are presented. Engineering is another one. A lot of men believe they will be working on Terminators or Gundams or spaceships, but in reality they end up supervising a factory floor or something just as mundane. A few years later, you will find yourself not only dissatisfied, but worse, find yourself with little to no time to try anything else. These careers not only demand your time and your skills, but they also want your soul. They want you to be utterly consumed by your job, because if you are not, you will not succeed as well as someone who is. And there is always someone who will give everything to their job. Furthermore, with all your earnings, you may have inflated your lifestyle to a point where you find it hard to try something else with a lower income. You've taken on all these liabilities and they need to be paid. The solution? Now this is perhaps the least bad of all the pitfalls I'm going to talk about today, as these high-powered careers will give you a lot of skills you can use for other things. You can switch to consulting or entrepreneurship or something of that sort, as long as you're able to downshift your earnings for a few months or years and pivot to something that you enjoy. If you find yourself in a high-powered career that you do not enjoy, I can bet that you are smart and driven, and you will have a high probability of success at making a career switch. Just be sure not to saddle yourself with a lot of liabilities so that you can never afford to escape. Number 6, dating incorrectly. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in his 20s must be in want for a date. Now I can only speak about this subject from a heteronormative perspective, as this has been my experience. You know the one reason why men generally earn more than women, and one reason that's rarely discussed? It is simply because the social rewards men receive for being wealthy are far greater than the social rewards women receive for being wealthy.
The Duke of Cambridge was crowned the world's sexiest bald man.
As Charlie Munger said, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." Now I want to be absolutely clear, I'm in no way suggesting that women cannot and should not be wealthy, but that rather sociologically, they have far less of an incentive to do so. And social incentives, particularly those in the dating market, can be incredibly powerful drivers of behavior. Not only do we know this to be true intuitively and anecdotally, but there have been scientific studies that show this to be true. One study found that ratings of attractiveness were around 1,000 times more sensitive to salary for females rating males compared to males rating females. And for those who say confidence is a turn on, guess what? It's easier to be confident when you are wealthy. All that is to say that there is immense pressure put on young men to acquire wealth and status, especially young men who are starting off from a point of minimal wealth and status, and when the lack thereof can be felt most acutely. So as you can imagine, young men trying to date will often spend inordinate sums of money not only paying for dates, but also accumulating the various accoutrements that display wealth and status.
Now what you need is one of those little foreign sports cars that he drives.
It's no wonder so many older men have midlife crises.
Whose car is that out front?
Mine. 1970 Pontiac Firebird, the car I've always wanted, and now I have it.
It is the first time after their kids have left and after they have reached some summit in their careers that they're able to take a pause and realize that their life was not exactly the life they wanted to live, but rather that they lived a life that was prescribed to them by society. The solution? It is a tough balance to hold on to the drive to excel financially that one has when young, while acknowledging the unhealthy pressures society puts on men to accumulate wealth and status. One must do it because one needs to or because one enjoys it, not because it is socially mandated. My suggestion is to stop using money to attract women. Being an interesting person who is fit and well-spoken and well-read is not only a cheaper way of attracting women, but it is also a constellation of traits that one should strive to have even without the dating incentive. Furthermore, cultivating these traits will pay dividends over one's entire life, as opposed to taking out a car loan and paying excessive rent to have a nice pad to bring your girl to is essentially stealing from your future. And while I did admit to confidence being easier to come by when one is wealthy, it is also a byproduct of being intellectually and socially developed. Knowing you have interesting opinions on art and politics and other topics, and knowing that you're fit and healthy will also produce confidence. Your 20s should be a time to find your calling, take risks, and set yourself up for success in your later decades. It is not a time to project status. After all, what status do most 20-somethings really have anyways? And using this method will attract the type of women who are attracted to you for these specific attributes other than wealth, and can serve as a good screening mechanism to keep out the more mercenary women, aka gold diggers. Number 7, the Manosphere. Yep, I'm gonna have to go there. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I envy you. This is a movement that casts men and women as diametrically opposed, homogeneous groups, and paints women as fundamentally mercenary, along with many other misogynistic flourishes.
I love women in the bedroom and in the kitchen.
It uses valid grievances that men as a collective have, and difficulties that men may face as a starting point, before quickly veering off into very questionable terrain. Pickup artists and a whole roster of men ranging from merely misguided to outright malicious populate this space.
Respect the and tame the
relying on incomplete science or outright pseudoscience to make their case and give them credibility.
It is evolutional, it is anthropological, it is biological.
The lower her self-esteem, the higher your chances, bro. It's been biologically proven by me. Your story is gonna release a hormone deep inside her body called insatiate. It makes women ovulate for sex.
Beliefs such as women only care about money and will cheat at the first opportunity are prevalent among these gurus, and their solution to this is to treat women as disposable and with suspicion. I wonder if there is a selection bias at work here, since these are the same types of guys who are buying bling and renting Lambos, and thereby attracting precisely the type of women that they resent. The attraction to the Manosphere is undeniable. It casts men as victims oppressed by women's progress. They look at social advancement in zero-sum terms, where any progress for women must necessarily mean a loss of progress for men. While there are genuine issues that men face today, such as higher suicide rates among men, men doing more dangerous work, the justice system taking the side of women by default rather than men's in domestic custody cases, a loneliness epidemic hitting men harder than women, etc., the movement is unable to find a nuanced understanding of these issues. It instead moves to the incorrect and frankly lazy conclusion of blaming all the ills and problems of men today on women. The Manosphere is an extreme belief system that young men who are at the nadir of social value are particularly susceptible to. This results in resentful men who are unable to have healthy relationships with women and who attract the wrong type of women. The solution? Recognize that for many young men, it will be very challenging to date when they are young and have their lowest social and dating market value. Yes, the good-looking young men from rich families with other endowed superficial attributes will attract a certain type of woman. But over time, as you build your material and internal value, you will notice more and effortless success with women, and the right kind of woman. And what exactly is the right kind of woman? Well, it's the woman that you would be happy to be with. Remember that patience is a virtue that is rare among the young. The sooner you recognize that impatience is a young man's Achilles heel, the sooner you can deal with it. Building your net worth, building your career, building your body, and developing your personality all take time. So don't rush it and enjoy the ride. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
You gotta make the money first. Then when you get the money, you get the power. Then when you get the power, then you get the woman.